So last video I said literally last video I literally said that, oh wow, there wasn't any reform news as far as I was aware. And almost immediately after I'd finished filming that video, I went and had a look at my little news thing because I've got a special little Google alert set up for anything that involves reform councillors popping up. And guess what? I have more news. It just never, ever ends. Ever ends. So, what has happened? Well, you may remember we had our Councillor Condor from Warwickshire on, and one of the things he was talking about was the fact that a lot of these reform people seemed very, very much being controlled, very, very much so. That they were scared to sort of speak out, go against the party or anything like that, and that is generally quite bad. Local politics is always a different beast compared to Westminster, and doing that is incredibly hard because it can damage more so than not. Other parties tend to have a pretty light hand when it comes to local politics because they at least recognize that. But apparently not Reform, who honestly, it is becoming very, very clear they are controlling all these councils and these councillors with an absolute iron grip. And this now seems to be filtering down to people who are on in charge of these councils and are on the committees. And we've now got a Reform councillor in Nottingham who insinuated he could just suspend a meeting and just ignore what was on the agenda. Which, if you've ever run any meetings to Robert's Rules of Order, or you've had an agenda, or you've got a constitution which tells you exactly how meetings should be run, no, a chairman cannot literally go throwing that off the agenda. I am not going to discuss that. So we're going over to Nottinghamshire today because this is where it has happened. So yeah, looks like interesting things happening on Nottinghamshire County Council. So before, of course, we get into this, please do, of course, click on the like, share, and the subscribe button down below as well. And of course, as well, don't forget to ring the bell as well so you get notifications when we go live. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can Buy Me Coffee, the YouTube thank you button. And of course, as always, there is the YouTube membership down below as well. And of course, well, it is Wednesday today, but it's not when this video comes out. So there you go. But there will be a new member video for the YouTube members and of course the Patreon members as well. So thank you very much to all those people who do help and support all the channel that way as well. So let us crack on, of course, then with this. Over to Nottinghamshire Live. Now, questions asked as Reform councillor insinuates suspending meeting. So the new County Council Reform Group have previously met with concerns now for stifling debate. Interesting that this is having this development here on Nottingham County Council. So, questions have now been asked after Reform councillor insinuated that he could shut down a meeting's agenda, which I will tell you now, you cannot do. A councillor, even a chairperson, cannot just do that. That is absolutely a no-no. Nottinghamshire County Council's Governance and Ethics Committee met last week for the very first time as a newly reform-led authority. So this is the Governance and Ethics Committee. Oh, we might have to see if this was recorded somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised if this has been. The meeting, of course, discussed various reports and reviews into the authority's governance back in 2024 to 2025 financial year. But before the main bulk of the meeting got underway, the committee's chair, Cllr Jim Vernon from Reform, made a statement as an opening motion about the potential for him as chairman to suspend the meeting's agenda and the role of the committee. Just, can't do that. Can't do that, Jim. Can't do that at all. Anyway, Cllr Vernon said, quote, "In the public interest of transparency and efficiency, I move to suspend Understanding Order 25.2 in the meeting's procedural rules of today's agenda. However, because so much work has been put into this and so many people are in attendance, we will stick with the agenda as published." And then it's like, why even say that? Why even say you want to move to suspend the meeting's agenda? What? Did he say that as a joke? I don't know. Anyway, this then was met with confusion from opposition members, with Councillor Steve Carr, an independent, asking, why would you want to suspend standing orders and stop this committee? I can't understand what you've said, why you've said that. Again, I can't understand why you said that either. Councillor Vernon then replied that he had not stopped the meeting and was continuing before moving on to giving thanks to the previous administration for the great achievements made in areas such as children's services. Councillor Bruce Langdon of the Conservatives later then asked that the monitoring officer for confirmation on what meeting procedure regulations allowed the chairman to do. The monitoring officer also confirmed on the procedural rules for the committee and subcommittee that meetings that councillors must speak strictly to the subject under discussion. Councillor Langdon and Councillor Keith Growling for the Conservatives, who was also substituting for Councillor Mike Adams that day, then called Councillor Vernon's previous insinuation that he had the power to suspend the meeting's agenda items nonsense. Speaking to local democracy reporting service, Councillor Goring said that he feels that Reform Authority are now trying to close down debate in meetings. Opposition members have previously voiced after the authority's June cabinet meeting left opposition questions unanswered, and we covered that when that happened. So it now seems, at least on this council, wouldn't be surprised if they try to do it on other councils, that they basically just don't answer, opposition questions. Just don't answer questions. That is I cannot believe you would try and do something like this. I cannot believe they think they would try and get away with something like this. This is insane. Anyway, the council's leader, of course, Mick Barton, has, of course, spoken very extensively in meetings about his, quote, open door policy for councillors to ask questions about ongoing works outside of council meetings in efforts to try and streamline council meetings, previously telling the LDRS his policy was not aiming to stifle debate. And that absolutely is. That absolutely is not only trying to stifle debate, it is an attempt now to try and silence transparency and accountability. Because what he's effectively asking opposition councillors to do is come and ask your question behind closed doors, and then if we say we don't know anything like that, well, it's not on the record. You can't prove it. Like I say, this is, to me, especially it appears from Nottinghamshire County Council, the Reform people on there are trying to shut down debate because they do not want questions asked. They do not want transparency, even though they claim that's apparently what they want. They do not want to be held account on that. So, earlier this month, back on the 10th of July, the authority's deputy leader, John Doddy from Reform, was also accused of time wasting and filibustering in a full council meeting. where he spent over 20 minutes replying to a question about women's health, which ultimately stopped other councillor questions being asked within the 1 hour question slot. You can see a pattern clearly emerging here on this council. You can definitely see a pattern emerging here. Councillor Girling also today added that I don't like the trend the trend that this scrutiny is going down. As opposition, we are there to look at what the council is doing and scrutinise it, highlighting concerns. That is our job. To quote the constitutional meetings policy as a reason to let the meeting go ahead anyway, when the previous policy that Councillor Vernon quoted was completely wrong. That is why the Governance and Ethics Committee is so important. That's where you look at the Constitution. It really needs to be open and transparent. Councillor Langdon also said that he thinks the Reform Group is now trying to lessen the democratic process, saying that some of it is because of a lack of experience. It is our, of course, responsibility to ensure the democratic process is maintained. So without those checks and balances not in place, the wrong decisions could then be made for the people of Nottinghamshire. If they continue down this road of trying to suppress democracy, they will damage the council for a very long time. What a surprise. Yeah, so Reform there, trying to stifle debate, and it is I think a worrying route. That is a very worrying route for that to be going down. I have to be wondering if this is going to start going out to the councils, because I wonder if they are on different councils trying out different strategies. Like, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this, and we'll see what works. So we'll see what happens on that. And don't worry, as I said, we are keeping an eye on as many of these reform councils as possible, but it is very difficult to keep an eye on all of them. But yeah, this is something new that's happening on Nottinghamshire. I would be very worried about being a resident, because if this is how your opposition councillors are being treated, what happens if you try and raise concerns about stuff is happening to your reform councillor? Like, what then is then happening to your local democracy? That is very, very bad. That is very, very bad. And it all starts, again, like I say, that new council leader, don't ask questions out open in public or when it's on the open record. Just come behind closed doors, and then we can help talk and discuss. You can even see the strategy from a mile away. You can see it a mile away. But that is very worrying. That is very, very worrying indeed. So, as always, let me know what you think about all this. And, do remember to click on the like and share button on your way out. And, of course, don't forget to ring the bell as well. So, as always, we'll see you all